It's the one and only Digo Double G.
Hello, JEEVdogg here, and welcome to another JEEV vlog. I decided to let you guys decide what I should talk about in this JEEV vlog, and there were quite a few good suggestions, and I'm sorry that I won't be able to include all of them, but if I did, then this JEEV vlog will probably last like 1 hour or 2 hours. But I am going to include one person's suggestions in this JEEV vlog, and that person, as you can see, is Plays, and his suggestions for what I should talk about are rising prices of football players and whether or not Lucas Perez is good enough for Arsenal. And so in this JEEV vlog, I'm going to be talking about rising prices of football players and whether or not Lucas Perez is good enough for Arsenal. And so without further ado, let's begin the JEEV vlog. Let's first talk about rising prices of football players. Now, I think that football players are rising in terms of prices because clubs are gaining more and more money. And I think that this is happening because leagues are getting more money, due to the fact that they're getting more attention from the public and from media sources. And since these leagues are getting more money, they're able to distribute more money to their clubs in terms of prize money. Additionally, some clubs are getting richer and newer sponsors. For example, Chelsea are now getting sponsored by Yokohama Tyres, and they gain £40 million a year from Yokohama. That's £20 million more than what they got from Samsung a year. And now Samsung were their former sponsor, the sponsor they had just before they got sponsored by Yokohama Tyres. Also, TV rights deals mean that clubs gain more money every time they're broadcast by TV companies like Sky Sports and BT Sport. Since clubs are getting more and more money, they feel they can encourage other clubs to get rid of their players by offering a larger sum of money. And then the clubs that are getting offered the money may think, oh, this is enough, maybe we could get more money. And then they say, okay, we want £5 million more. And then that club then goes and offers it, and then the club may refuse and ask for more and more and more. And I think this is happening with like a lot of clubs. They keep asking for more and more, and so they just, as a result, are increasing the price tags of their players. Additionally, I think that a lot of clubs have picked up that all clubs are gaining more and more money, so they increase the price tags of their players so that they can get more money for their players, so that they can buy just better players. And also, they may want to spend the money on other parts of their club as well as the player end. And so they increase the price tags of their players so that they can strengthen themselves. I think that there are some positives of rising prices of football players. One positive is that a club that isn't the richest and the best, such as Southampton, can get a large sum of money for selling a promising player. And as a result, that club can then spend money on more players and therefore become stronger, usually. And then that'll give them a higher chance of finishing higher up their league table or going further in a cup competition. I think another positive is that now some players are going for the right price. For example, Mats Hummels was sold to Bayern Munich by Borussia Dortmund for £30 million. Now, Mats Hummels is a world-class defender, and I'd say he's one of the best in Germany, and he's becoming one of the best defenders in the world. And I think if it was 5 years ago, he would have been sold for £25 million, and I don't think that would have been right, because that's not the right sum of money for a defender of his calibre. And so £30 million sounds like the right sum of money. Also, Lucas Perez, a fullback for France, was sold to Barcelona by PSG for £14 million. And I thought that £14 million was the right sum because Lucas Perez is a promising left back. I think he's only 22 and he's got some good skill attributes, and he had a good season last season at Roma. Also, I think that if he's played frequently at Barcelona, he could be one of the best left backs in the world. He could be the next Patrice Evra. And so I think that because of that, £14 million sounded right. I think there are some negatives associated with rising prices of football players, and I think that one of them is that due to more being spent on footballers, we're seeing clubs spend £30 million, £40 million, £50 million, and I think collectively clubs are spending hundreds and hundreds of millions on football players, and I think that this is wrong. All of these hundreds of millions of pounds could have been spent on housing, on schools, on hospitals, on the NHS in general, or it could have been provided to charities to help out the less fortunate. But no, it's being spent on football players. After all, they do kick the ball around for 90 minutes. Now, I love football, and I'm never going to stop loving football. I'll keep following it until the end. But at the same time, I think it's wrong that all of this money is going towards these football players, because whilst football does entertain, it's not going to complete and utterly change the lives of the people. But if all of these hundreds of millions were spent on, say, the NHS, then lives would be changed. But sadly, it can't be helped. But you have to remember that there are a lot of clubs that have foundations set up, and these foundations do try to help out the less fortunate. But sadly, I don't think that enough money is going into these foundations, and I don't think it's set to change. Another negative is that there are some players that don't go for the right sum of money. In fact, they end up going for too much money, and so they end up being overrated. An example of such a player is John Stones. He joined Manchester City for £47.5 million. Now, sure, he's a promising defender. He could be the next John Terry or Rio Ferdinand, and for the right reasons, by the way. But he didn't have a good season last season, and like most England players, he didn't have a good Euro 2016. And so he really should have gone for £20 million. Another example of a player that was overrated in terms of their cost when bought was Paul Pogba. And I say this because £89 million was spent on him. That's a world record. And I think that he's really promising. And he had a good season last season, contributing 8 goals and 12 assists. But at the same time, as I was saying in the G-vlog, he isn't a complete midfielder. And he may have had a decent Euros, but I wouldn't say that he's the best midfielder in the world yet. I'd say that he needs a bit more time to develop, and then he can be said to be the best midfielder in the world, and then we can start saying that he is worth £89 million or something around that. And so for the moment, I think that £89 million sounds like too much. I talk about promise with Stones and Pogba. Now, the problem with rising prices is really promising players end up getting really high price tags, and then they end up getting sold for the really high price tags, and as a result they are expected to be much better than they really are, and then when they don't play to those expectations, they get bad reception and high pressure from the crowds, from the managers, from the owners and everyone else, and then that causes them to not develop properly, and then they end up being completely abysmal. Now, Stones and Pogba seem to be going in the right direction, but I feel that there are some players who have been bought for mass amounts of money that may not end up developing correctly, and so we may end up seeing them at really poor clubs when they could have been playing at the best in the world. And this is all down to rising prices of football players. I decided to go outside because it was getting a bit dark in my room. So I'm now going to talk about whether I think Lucas Perez is good enough for Arsenal. So Lucas Perez scored 17 goals for Deportivo last season. Deportivo, by the way, are his old club. And I think that 17 goals is good for a La Liga striker, because you see the top ones, that's excluding Messi and Ronaldo, score 25 and over. And Lucas Perez managed 17, and I guess that's not too far away from 25, so I think quite decent. And he was really good at the start of the season. He was very consistent. Okay, he started to fade away in the middle of the season, but that was due to the whole team being in such poor form. since the team in such poor form, the balls weren't able to get to him to get knocked into the back of the net by him. I guess if Deportivo wasn't so bad, then Lucas Perez could have been in the 20s in terms of the number of goals he scored last season. So the thing about Perez is he has a good amount of pace about him, and he's rather versatile too, because he's able to play anywhere along the front line, whether it's the left, right or centre, whereas Giroud can only play in the centre. So that makes him less versatile than Perez. And okay, Giroud scored more goals than Perez last season, but I think that's only down to the fact that Perez was playing for a team with less quality than Arsenal. Also, I think that Perez is more consistent than Giroud, because last season, Giroud had a 15-game goal drought. That is not good for a striker. I think it makes them come across as rather inconsistent. Now, the worst goal drought that Perez had last season was a 5-game goal drought. So I think that implies something about Perez's consistency. But coming back to team form, I think Lucas Perez will score 15 goals for Arsenal this season, or perhaps even more than 15 goals, because I don't see Arsenal having a 13-game winless streak like Deportivo did last season. Therefore, I think that the balls are going to get to Lucas Perez so he can knock them into the back of the net rather frequently like he did at the start of the season for Deportivo. Also, I think he'll be an upgrade on Giroud, and sure, he ain't world class, but you don't need to be a world class striker in order to score like 15 plus goals, because last season Odion Igalo scored 16 goals and he isn't world class, and Jamie Vardy, he scored 24 goals last season and he was only 1 goal behind top scorer Harry Kane. And also he scored the same number of goals as Sergio Aguero, who you could argue is the best striker in the Premier League. And one could argue that Jamie Vardy isn't exactly world class. So, you know, I think Lucas Perez may well even get to 24 goals or perhaps even higher. He could be the top scorer for the season. Therefore, I think that Lucas Perez is good enough for Arsenal. So that was all I had to say about rising prices of football players and whether I think Lucas Perez is good enough for Arsenal. So I think I'm going to call it the end of this jeevdogg. Make sure to like this jeevdogg and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and drop a comment down below. Do you think that Lucas Perez is good enough for Arsenal? And do you agree that too much money has been spent on Stones and Pogba? Could have less money been spent on them, or do you think that the right amount was spent on both of them? Your opinions are always valuable and I'd love to hear them. I think my next video will be out on Monday and that'll probably be a Match of the Week episode. But for now, this is the end of this jeevdogg. Like, subscribe and comment, and I'll see you soon.